Awesome, awesome, awesome. Welcome to the latest edition of Coach Ford Speaks podcast. And I am your host, Mr. Dreams to Reality, Coach Ford. I'm so excited to catch up with the Peak family, man. This is beautiful, man. Is this not cool? Is this not cool or what?
This is cool.
Yeah.
This is cool. So everybody, I'm gonna let you guys introduce yourselves, but I'm gonna just start off this way. So I'm gonna give a quick introduction. I'm gonna let these guys introduce themselves. So Brett is a former player of mine, and then Bill is now a friend of mine. Right? He's the dad of my former player Brett, and it was a long journey getting Brett to where he is today, and so it's cool to get these guys on the episode. But you guys introduce yourselves to the Coach Ford Speaks podcast.
Go ahead, Brett.
No, I'll let you start it. You started out.
Yeah, okay. Brett.
My name is Bill Peak, and of course I'm Brett's dad. And he went to St. Paul Lutheran High School, and he had a really great experience there. And I would say it was worth every dollar that we spent for him to go there. And what he learned there, and what he was taught, not only was Christianity, but also the academics, the sports. He couldn't have got that anywhere else around here. So we were so thankful that he had the privilege, and we got to know Coach Ford. And how we got to know Coach Ford was Coach Brett started playing on one of his AAU basketball teams through about 4 years ago. And then Brett really liked Coach Ford. We liked Coach Ford. And got a relationship there, which is another thing about St. Paul is you get a lot of relationships that you don't get anywhere else. You become a number at bigger schools. With St. Paul, we never felt that Brett was a number, and that if we had any issues, it was easy to get a hold of, to get the problem solved. Not that it's perfect. No place is perfect, but it was a great place for him to go.
Introduce yourself, Brett.
I guess it's my turn.
Yeah,
Brett
man.
Like my dad said, I played under Coach Ford for, I guess, 3.5 years, almost 4 years. I started out with AAU with him, and then I transitioned over to playing high school basketball for him, and great experience, great learning opportunity. I mean, it wasn't always easy, but he pushed me to my brink quite a few times, but he set me up to where I'm a multi-sport college athlete now, and I probably wouldn't have been able to get that opportunity if it wasn't for St. Paul and for you as a coach. So.
Yeah, that's exciting, man. You guys going right into it. I like it. And so, on my Coach Ford Speaks podcast, it's my coaching side, right? And this is my opportunity to share with the world what it's like to have coaching. And the biggest thing that I've been talking about is the mentorship. And so, Brett and Bill, you already talked on a little bit. So I got a couple questions I'm going to ask you. Go into it for that parent that's like, okay, I get he coaches, but what does the mentoring thing mean? Is that really real? Is he really mentoring, or is he just saying that to say it? Right. So what are your thoughts on the mentoring aspects of it from a parent perspective? And then Brett, let's talk about it from a player's perspective.
Okay, I'll talk about it from the parent's perspective. And the main thing that I seen was when Brett was going to the bigger high school close to where we lived at, he was lacking in different abilities, I should say, to make him a better player. But nobody wanted to take to make him, nobody wanted to take no effort to make him better. It was like, whatever you are, we'll take it, but we aren't they didn't have no way to really build the players up. It was like, whatever you were, that's what you were, and then you weren't going to get better. Well, when he went to St. Paul and Coach Ford playing AAU basketball, Coach Ford took a special interest in him to build him to be the best player he could be. And he never would have got that. I'll use an example. Brett used to go an hour before school to shoot baskets, him and a friend. Okay, just them two. And he did that religiously every day. And the coaches wouldn't even let him use the better balls to shoot with. If you have a player that wants to put out that much effort, they need to be shown a little bit, give them a little, help them get as much as they can. But that's why I say he was just kind of like a number. And you have in any big schools or anywhere you go, you have your cliques and everything else. And if you don't have the right name or don't have the money behind your name, then you don't get a play.
So from a player perspective, you kind of covered the basketball side of it, but I'd say it extends a lot more beyond basketball. I'd say a student athlete as a whole, just because I remember relentlessly whenever I start and I drive my dad and you, Coach Ford, crazy. I'd be like, Coach Ford, what do I need to get better? Coach Ford, I don't know what I'm doing. You'd be like, Brett, chill out. We got a process. You sit down with me, and that's a lot of things that I think either coaches won't do or they don't want to spend the time to build a program and to care about their players like you or any other good mentor is willing to do. And I know not only did we build a relationship like through as my coach, but even now, like this proves it, like build it outside of, and I think we're good. Like you'll send me ideas, be like, hey, what do you think about this? And so it's good to develop each other and help each other grow as a whole. And I think that's something that the mentorship that you provided for me last outside of just the game of basketball.
Yeah, and I think that's a big thing. So, I can get on here and talk about it, but unless you live it, right? I can remember this. Me and Bill talking. You guys were going down to Branson or something for vacation, and Bill's like, "Brett's going crazy because we won't let him shoot outside of." Do you remember what that was? Anyways,
Our condo out there, he wanted to
yeah, it
put in
was.
practice. Yeah.
Yeah, he wanted to shoot the three, and I'm like, "No, we got to fix this shot." And he's like, Coach Bill's like, "No, you just got to trust the process, right?" And so I remember that. It was so funny because Bill's like, man, he's going crazy. Can you step? I'm like, no, we got to fix it. We got to work on it. We got to get him disciplined to do this. So talk about that experience and how it's helped you now going in adulthood, going through, because now you're almost through your first year as a freshman in college.
Yeah.
And so talk about that experience. Talk about how that correlates to your training now and having to live your life as a student athlete at the collegiate level.
So it's kind of funny. I remember one of the first times I ever trained with you, and this was before I went and I was one of your players for the high school, is we were doing individual training, and you wrote down, and I still have the piece of paper on my desk, it said, repetition is the mother of learning. And so I look at that every day and realize that, and it's not always the easiest, but even inside of life, like it kind of taught me, like you have to work for it, and maybe you don't see the results like instantly, but as you continue, you keep putting the repetition, you keep putting those reps in, it'll eventually work out for you. It might not work out in the way you expect, but there'll be an outcome that comes from that. And so even outside of sports, like you have to, no matter what field you're wanting to go into, you have to put work into that field to whatever you want to do. And if you continue to repeat the process and show discipline, that's something you really instilled, is showing up every day. And I'm gonna be honest with you. At the beginning, I didn't like shooting. I think I couldn't shoot further than the block. You didn't shoot me, and I had to shoot that the whole entire summer. But it's funny because a couple months later, I remember seeing a Steph Curry video, and right whenever he was about to go into high school, he had the same thing because Del Curry didn't let him shoot outside the block, and they had to fix his shot, and it was all whole summer long right there, just shooting that all day long. So it's funny to see how your teachings are the same as like some of the greats. I don't know. But
Now, and Bill, you played high school sports too. You played collegiately.
Yeah.
Talk to us about that when you hear your son talking about it now. He's a college athlete, and that transitioning of having those coaches and mentors and from your time as a college athlete and high school player to now hearing him talking about that. Do you see those parallels? Do you see them? I mean, I know you see the importance, but help the parent that's like, okay, my kid's getting ready to go to high school, or my kid's just starting off in sports, and I never was a high school athlete, or I was never a college athlete. Help the parents out at home that's like, okay, listen, here's the process, right? And the importance of what Brett talked about.
I totally agree with what Brett's saying. You're saying there is a process. It's how much you want to dedicate yourself to that process is a lot of it. And I'll be honest, a lot of kids don't have that dedication. They want the results, but they want the rewards, and they want the acclimates, and they want all their name in the paper or on the TV, but then they don't want to put the work in. And a lot of people think this is given, especially nowadays, a lot of people think it's just given to them. And you have to put the work in. You have to start out young. You have to build your program up. And that's one thing that I saw when he went to St. Paul was compared to any other coach he had, you had a set program set up for them, even though they didn't like it, because I would be out there with him when you're talking about shooting baskets. I'd be out there with him, rebounding them and everything. He's like, I don't know why Coach Ford's doing this, making me do this. I was like, Brett, it will pay off in the end. You just have to trust it. Trust. And it wasn't always the fun, Sometimes you have to get a little dirty and you have to do stuff you don't like to get to where you want to be at. But the main thing is if you get there, you'll be happy. And the thing is, as far as, if you want to be a college athlete, it becomes more of a job than it is a sport. So if you don't love that sport you're playing, no matter what that sport is, you have 2 days. You'll be practicing in the morning, you'll be practicing in the evening, and then you have games, and you have to be able to juggle that on top of the academics too. And not everybody can do that. There's a lot of talented players out there that can could probably play Division I or go to the NBA, but they can't put it all together. And academics is a big part of it, and I think a lot of times I just get left out, especially if you go to a bigger school. As long as you're a good sports athlete, it doesn't matter what your grades are. We'll get you by, but that doesn't help you in college because you don't have that same. So a lot of times you don't have that same support system that you do in your high school because everybody knows who you are because you become a number. And a lot of kids struggle because they're the star athlete on their team in high school, then they go to college and they got equal talent all the way around them. So if you don't have that good work ethic and good academic that separates you, then in going into the weight room and doing those little things that you'll never make it in the college atmosphere. You'll either quit or you'll quit playing. A lot of guys can't, or a lot of guys and girls can't handle that.
Yeah, and I see that parallel even in you work in your professional life. You see it in your professional life where people don't want to do the work. They don't want to show up. They don't want to, I don't want to move that pallet, or I don't want to do this, or I don't want to do that. I don't want to stay after and clean. And I tell these guys, and Brett will tell you this, I'm like, what are you guys going to do when you get in the real world? Like, some of you guys I would fire, right? They're like, you can't say it. I was like, I'd fire you today. I don't care what you're talking about. Like, because you're getting ready to go out in the real world and you're a representation of this program. And if I don't send you out here with the understanding that when you walk across that stage and you're going to go work for a corporation or a job or a small business owner, there are demands, not show up and get your check, right? You just can't get your check because you want a check. And I think that parallel to every aspect of life. I mean, you hear Brett talk about he's got to work, 6 to 11, he's off today, right? And now all those habits and what we call habit forming is important. It's showing up now where those habits of Brett, you got to do the reps. Well, I don't want to do the reps. Well, you got to do the reps because when you become an adult, you got to grit your teeth. And you know this, you're learning it. Bill already knows. You just got to grit your teeth and work. It's like, man, this 60-hour work week is going to suck. And you got to work it because you got a family to support or you got bills to support. You got a girlfriend now and you got college expenses that you got to pay for. So there is no, and the reason, and the biggest thing on getting you guys on here is helping parents see the other side of it, right? Like, it's one thing to be the parent and seeing your kid in the atmosphere, but then it's another thing seeing your kid at college and saying, okay, how do I figure this thing out? Like, how do I, having a mentor that you can call back home or call your parents. And it's important to be able to call your parents, but it's different when you have somebody that's not your parents because it's not your parents saying, well, Brett, and it's like, oh my gosh, okay, let me call somebody else that's not my parents because it's so frustrating. I mean, is that parallel there for you, Brett, where it's like, I don't want to listen to my parents because they always going to chew you out, right? Or they're going to tell me something I don't want to hear. And so, yeah, talk about that
sometimes
a little
bit. Sometimes my mom, but I think a lot of times mentors can come at it from a more objective standpoint because no matter, and I don't think it's a bad thing because I think your parents want to be there for you, but they're also blood. And so sometimes they can come at it like, oh, I just want to comfort you. I just want to do this. And not saying necessarily my parents are bad at that, but I think just in general. And I think I can come to you or other people and they can be like, we care about you, but these are the facts. Like that, they're not going to bullcrap me. And so I don't know. I just think a mentor provides that. And I think knowing like there's stuff that you've went through that my dad or my parents haven't went through. And so you can provide better advice for certain aspects of it.
Well, and I think that's, and I always talk about this being a village component. Like this here call shows it, right? Like this is going to help somebody. This is going to help some youth where their parents are like, man, Coach Ford is super crazy and he's mean and he's getting on to my kid and he's making my kid have to work out really hard. And it's like, no, I'm teaching your kid a life lesson that when they're not in your home, you want somebody to say, man, I'd hire that Pete kid. Right. And that's what we want. And we want the lessons I'm teaching them to mirror what Bill and Sarah's teaching you at home. Exactly. Right. We don't want it to be where you're going to practice and I'm telling you, for example, we had an incident at practice. I had to kick a kid out of practice, kicked him off the team, right? Because that didn't mirror what we wanted, right? And so if I wasn't teaching those lessons, then Bill would be like, well, we didn't bring our son here for that. We brought him here to be taught the right way. And I think for a lot of parents not understanding that it's deeper than basketball, it's bigger than sports. So when you looking for a job reference, now it's like, who do I call for a job reference that's not named my parents, right? And so, for the parents at home, I hope they internalize this and they understand like how big this is and how important it is for for a parent to be like, okay, I'm getting backing outside of home. Talk about that, Bill, as far as knowing like, okay, your son's going to be with these people for 8 hours. I know you alluded to it in terms of school, but how is that for you looking at Brett now and seeing the success he's having and being prepped for the rest of his life?
Well, I think it was a great experience for him. One of the things that we really enjoyed was Brett could call, text, email, whatever the teachers anytime they needed to. If he had a problem with anything he was doing in schoolwork, he'd talk to his coaches anytime. There was never a time where he couldn't get a hold of somebody that he needed to get answers. And sometimes rare if you go to a public school to try to get to the right person, or you have to set up an appointment. And a lot of times they would drop whatever they're doing to try to help you get, figure out your problem you're having, or help Brett with what he needed to do, whatever. So that was very comforting to know. And then we've even seen it since he's left St. Paul, whereas going to College of the Ozarks, that there's people that go down there and they come visit him, take him out to dinner, really still show that even though he's not going there, he's still part of the family. He's still part of the St. Paul family. He hasn't gotten forgotten about just because he doesn't go there. So that means a lot to us that the teachers at St. Paul, and the people that are affiliated with them that care that much for their students, even after they graduate, that they still care. And I know Brett can probably attest to this. He could probably call any of them if he had a problem or he had trouble making a decision, and they would probably try to guide him the best he could.
Yeah, and I think the cool part for me now is, as these guys age, and especially for Brad and Ryan Dempsey was another one, Brett would send me resources now. He goes, Coach, this guy is saying the same stuff you're saying, or hey, look into this guy. He's doing the same thing that you're looking to do. And I think that's the cool part now is, giving these guys, as Brett was saying, an additional blueprint. So your parents lived a life this way, but having that person that can say, okay, Coach lives life a little bit different. And so that forms that person later into adulthood, because then they have these different backgrounds to look at. Like, okay, my college coach is saying this, and I can add this. And so speak in terms of the skills, and Bill, you've alluded to a lot, but Brett, talk about the ability to network and the communication skills that comes from that, or how it's helped you, especially now at C of O.
So I'd say like networking personally, you always talk to me about it, but I think it's something that you overlook, because if you look at like a lot of job positions, a lot of them you can apply for them, but you have like 10 times better chance if a lot of jobs you get by who you know and who you're reaching out to. And as you're saying, like networking not only allows you to learn, but it also, you can get, like how I did with you, I reach out to you, you build each other up, rather than in the world, I feel like there's too much of trying to take each other down. And so I think you always, no matter what I was doing, you're like, Brett, you need to network, do this with somebody, do this. Like you never know where it'll go in the future, and you'll gain a connection with them. So I think there's so many things that you can learn from that. And I don't know, I just think it'll make your life in the game of basketball and outside of school or life in general. I think C of O, personally, like a couple of my teachers, they've already said, hey, if you want an internship, like for the field you're going into, we can hook you up and like it'll be a good one. And like they've told me that I think you need to do an internship for the field you're going in, because it's a harder field to get into. And so kind of like C of O, I wouldn't say has as much family aspect as I did at St. Paul, just because it's a bigger college, so you can't expect that. But I still think a lot of the teachers have the same and they want to provide for their students and make them the best they can be. You're not just a number. They truly want you to graduate and pursue and do what you want to do later in life.
That's beautiful. I love it. I love it. I love it. So I won't hold you guys up too much longer. I told Brett I wouldn't hold you guys too long. But last thing, Brett, especially for you, as you know, I wrote the book. I got to order you guys your shirts and get those shirts to you. But Brett, tell the world right? Now that you're in college, and Bill, you could talk about this too. The saying from playing for me, just do your job, right? So
Well, you're
help
missing a word,
help
but
people
okay.
out. Well, well, that's in the heat of the moment. Right now, we're not in the heat of the moment, but just talk about it from you guys' experience and what that means. Because I think when people hear me say it, they think, but he's just being mean to the kids, and it's like I'm really not. There's a lesson here, and so talk about that, and then I'll bring it full circle for everybody.
So I guess I'll start it with one of your number one catchphrases that I guess you brought up towards the end of my career plan for you, but you're like, the standard is a standard is a standard.
Yeah.
And so uh, it's kind of no matter, like, sometimes I don't want to go to class. I have to go to class. I don't want to work 15 hours a week, but sometimes you have to look at, okay, I'm doing this so I can graduate without any debt, and I'm doing this for a reason. And sometimes I don't want to go to practice. I don't want to have 2 days. I don't want to wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning to go to practice, but it's what I have to do to get where I want to be, or whether it's relationships. Sometimes I'm like, man, like, I don't know if I can deal with this right now. Like, it's stressing me out. I have all these other things going on, but it's like, you have to look at what's more important to you and saying the end goal is more important than now. I think a lot of times in culture, as you were saying earlier, too many people focus on short-term pleasure over long-term goals. And I think too many people give up too easily. And I feel like that's another reason you have a network is a good thing, is you have people to push you, be like, hey, this is what you need to do. Like, and not just, oh, you can take today off. Like, you want to be able to have that surroundings that push you to become the best you can be.
What you got on that, Bill?
Oh, I agree with what he's saying. Um, as far as a parent wise, being in the stands when you were going off on do your job during a heated basketball game, a close game, guys, sometimes you won, sometimes you didn't. I know parents probably were looking like, well, what did you do? And and I was like, well, did you just see what that player just did? He has every reason to it. I think sometimes the parents are too easy on their kids sometimes, and then if they see anybody kind of trying to tell them what to do, then they kind of get offended by it. But I loved it. I loved it. I love that hard nosed mentality because I think that's what's going to take for a player, a person to exceed in life is if you don't have that want to or that do that extra and make sure you're doing your job every day in every practice and every game, then you won't be successful in life. And I think
Yeah,
that's
and
awesome. Oh, just sorry, didn't mean to cut you off. I think
no,
that's
go ahead.
I want to read your book. I think that's awesome that you wrote that book, and I like the name of it too.
So Brett, from a player's perspective, because you got that speech a couple of times.
A couple,
From
coach.
yeah, well, okay, well, yes, we'll say a couple. But for you as a player, and now seeing your role in college,
Yeah,
right, and when you see people who didn't finish school and didn't take what I
yeah,
said to heart and didn't take the advice, right, because now as an adult, you really do have a job to do, like we
yeah,
cannot show up. Bill knows you cannot show up to your job and expect them to pay you for not doing your job,
Exactly.
right? And the immediate supervisor is like, just do your job, just show up, do your work, right? And then clock out, go home, and be the best that you can be. And so I'm going to bring it full circle, but from your player's perspective of just do your job. And I think people might get it miscued. Like, I don't say it unless you're not doing your job. And when we're in practices and they miss me talk to you the 1,000th time for the assignment, hey, this player is going this direction and you let him go there for the 100th time. What do you want me to do here? Who else do you want me to put in the game? It's somebody else's job to cover that assignment, right? So talk about that as a player.
So I think a lot of times, well, sometimes you get mad at us, but a lot of times it was funny enough as we'd be like, whenever Coach Ford gets onto us, we play better. We're like, I remember us having at least the captains our senior year. We're like, Coach Ford, you need to get onto us more, and you'd be like, I know, but like parents and all these people were like, Coach Ford, you need to chill out. And we're like, no, like we'll go talk to him. It don't matter. Like we want that style of basketball, and just having somebody who I feel like holding you accountable. Like, I'd much rather you hold me accountable. And I remember sometimes you'd say, if I'm not talking to you, I'm not yelling at you, there's a problem. And you should know that because that means I don't care. And I think you holding us accountable just shows that you care. And I think that's for every aspect of life. And honestly, I'd be upset if you weren't yelling at me. I don't know if it's like it at the time, but sometimes you don't like what's happening at the time and you look back and be like, Coach Ford was doing that for a reason, or God was doing that for a reason. There's a reason that you went through that situation how you did.
Yeah, and I think the cool part, and I'll bring it full circle for everybody. So when I'm telling these players just do your job, and I talk about this in the book, the basketball edition will be out next year, but the purpose is to become the best version of yourself possible. So when I'm talking to that player, I'm saying, hey, your job is to be the best you, right? That's not my job. That's not your parents' job. That's not your teammates' job. That's not grandma's job. That's not the referee's job. That is your job to complete your task to the best of your abilities. And if we don't teach this lesson, then what are we teaching them, right? So now you're in college, and if I'm not teaching you this lesson, and Bill looks back 4 years from now and you don't learn this lesson, it's like, well, what did my son learn? What was the lessons of sports? And me and him both played high school sports, and he played college, and I coached at the collegiate level for a little bit. So if you don't see those behaviors, if they're not being taught that, then they're not going to be successful in this life. They're just going to be like, which we know, all the other guys that don't get the mentor, that don't hear those speeches, and they don't internalize it. And I think that's so important. And it's important that for people who are here, so they don't hear my voice and just say, well, he's going to say all the good stuff about it. Hey, these guys will tell you, they'll be very honest. I've had a lot of crazy moments. I had one tonight at practice where I'm like, you guys aren't doing your jobs and just making me upset, right? And so, but that's only when I'm knowing they're not being their best. If they're being their best, fine. Then, okay, we wash our hands with it. We go on about our day. But if I know Brett's capable of 20 points and he gives me 5, we got a problem, right? Like, that's just, Bill knows that's a problem. Like, you gave us 5 points tonight and we lost by 10, right? So you're a 15, 20-point scorer. And I'm not saying Brett, but I'm saying other guys, like, okay, your job is to get 10 and 10 and you got 2 and 5. What are you doing here to help us win? What are you doing to help your organization win? What are you doing to help when you go to your job and you didn't clock in, right, for the 1,000th time, not on time, and now we're behind on the shift? Or what if you miss your relay on track and field? Or what if you miss your assignments, right? So all those parallels go deeper and rooted in life, and that's why I wrote the book. The basketball edition is going to be fun because I'm going to go have you guys give me some forwards to that book and talk about that experience. But the Just Do Your Job book is to help people understand, like, wake up every single day to become the best version of yourself, right? Like, it's not my job to make Bill be Bill. It's not my job to make Brett to be Brett. It's my job to be Coach Ford and be the best I can be, and then challenge you to be the best that you can be. And then your job is to challenge me to be the best I be. And then I'm supposed to go work on being the best that I can be. And then you bring that together. And then guess what? We're all performing at a high level. And so, anyways, that was good stuff, guys.
Wait, hold on,
you guys
Coach
have,
Ford.
go ahead.
Hold up. Okay, so I don't want to go too much into your book, but I know you're a big thing about pushing 20-year-olds now. And so for me and the other 20-year-olds, what would your advice be going through your 20s as somebody who's experienced that?
Experience what?
Experience just life in your 20s and going through that process. Like, what would you change? What would your best advice be for that?
So that's a good question. So I haven't talked about this in the book. The 20-year-old thing just came up the last couple of weeks, right? Because I don't think people understand the gravity of what I do for you guys on the behind the scenes, where you could text me like, hey, or I'm texting you, I'm like, hey, what's going on? How's everything going? What are you doing? You're like, Coach, I'm busy. I'm like, all right, well, don't be texting me at 11 p.m. because I'm sleeping. First of all. So, but people don't see the behind the scenes where me and Bill's having a conversation. Brett's really upset, and I'm like, Bill, he's fine. He's just got to work through it. And Bill's had to go. You guys had to have a lot of conversations about the season, right? So, as a 20-year-old, having that access is important, because I had that access as a 20-year-old, as a 21, 22-year-old, 23-year-old. People that were older than me that would give me wisdom, that would talk to me like, hey, be cool. That's not how we operate around here. Like, when I go to the job, I can go to the job and act like a 19, 20-year-old on the job when I'm working with people that are 24, 25, 26, 28, some of them 30, 40, 50, 60s. And they're like, hey, we're here to do a job. We're here to do a function. If you're not going to do that, you probably should work here. And okay, here's the true story. Just do your job. That's what they would tell you. You have a job to do here. And if you're not going to do it, why are you working? Why don't you go to the little kid's job and work that job? Don't be here, right? And so for me, it's like, if I'm doing 20s again, I wouldn't change that access to people. who held me accountable, that called me out on stuff, that demanded my best for me. So when I was in my 20s, 21, 22, I had my big brother Lemmy, which you've met him. He was manager at Applebee's and I worked on it. It was a high expectation. Come in, do your job, do the best of your ability. Don't make the other servers pick up your slack. Don't make the other managers pick up your slack. Don't make the other workers pick up your slack. That's not right. That's not doing your job. Now you're making more work on them and you're not holding your weight. And so for me, as a 20-year-old, getting around people that are going to push you to be better, that aren't going to be like, hey, let's party every weekend, instead of saying, well, what are we doing to prepare for our future? Which you can do that. And don't get me wrong, I did it, but my life changed very early because I had my oldest at 21. So my oldest will be 12. I'll be 33. So I had my oldest at 21. So that window of time for me was very short. And so I was blessed and fortunate that I had to get real focused real fast, because this 1-year-old is coming, this baby's coming to the world regardless. Right. And so you got to become real mature real fast, because mama ain't coming to pay your bills. Bill knows what I'm talking about. We ain't coming to pay your adult bills. Now, we will help you out, but we're not coming to pay your bills that you created, right? And so what I would say for them is financial literacy, financial management, having a plan of what are you going to do with your money? Every time you get a dollar, prepare it for your future, invest it, reinvest it into it. And we got, we talk about our XRP and all that stuff, and we've been talking these conversations for years. And those conversations don't change now that you're in adulthood. It's still invest your money. Get with somebody that knows more about money than you do. Look into the stock market. And I'm not going to go into this. I don't want the government coming knocking on my door, right? So, but just take it, be smart with your money, be a wise investor, looking for business opportunities, looking for ways to make your money grow, not just spending your money, especially now that you're young. Find a way to put that money to generate more money and compound interest, because by the time you're 30, you're going to be 30 anyway, Lord's willing. So if I'm 20, I need to figure out how I'm going to compound this money for the next 10 years, because guess what's going to happen? The time is going to pass anyway. So do you want to be in front of the 8 ball or behind the 8 ball? So what happens is most people get stuck on this hamster wheel of, I got a life, the bills are going, and now I got to go get a job to pay for the stuff that's already mounting up. Instead of saying, okay, I got to get ahead of the expenses. And when you're in your 20s, most likely you're not going to get a job that's ahead of your expenses. So you need to start developing a plan now to say, okay, my expenses are $2,000. I need to make $3,500, right? Because I'm going to need to create a nest egg and an emergency fund to be prepared for the future. So most don't prepare for the future. And then you notice they'll get in the cycle. And they're like, I can't break the cycle. I'm stressed out. And so you don't want to get into that cycle if you can. So it's great you're at CFO, so you don't have to worry about that cycle of, I got to pay student loans, and I got to pay for my expenses. Oh, I'm going to get married one day. And now it's like, okay, now I got to bring all this together. Now we're going to have children. And now Bill knows what I'm talking about. He knows, right? And so be ahead of the game. Be ahead of the game and start every year. I would recommend a money goal, right? I would say you want to have $500 to $1,000. And I'm just saying, chill out, money gurus and IRS, chill out. And Bill, you can jump in here anytime, but save $500 to $1,000 and don't touch it. Put it in an investment account and don't touch it, which Bill already taught you this stuff, but I'm just, for the other 20-year-olds that need to hear this, don't touch it. Leave it alone. Be very disciplined, because what happens when you're 30? There's a lot of 30-year-olds that don't have the game plan. I didn't have all this information. I didn't learn until a couple years ago when we were talking about XRP and Bitcoin and crypto and all those things, right? Like, I just learned this stuff in 2020. So I'm sharing it now because I'm like, man, this kid has some potential. I really don't want them being stuck in a position where they're trying to learn it at 32, right? It's like, hey, Brett, you're 19, you're getting ready to turn 19, be way ahead of me, right? Get it now. So when you're 30 something years old, you're not that I'm stressing, like, I'm blessed and fortunate. I'm a business owner. I'm an entrepreneur. I have skill sets, but I didn't know this at 19 and 20, this information. I couldn't share this with you at 20 because I didn't live a life yet. Right. And Bill, you could jump in on that. What do you think about that? Like, I didn't live a life, so I couldn't share.
I totally agree with it. And I guess if the 20-year-olds that are listening out there, or anybody that's young, is invest while you're young, because you can get so much more for your money when you're young investing than you can when you're wait till you're 30, 40, or 50. Kind of like Coach Ford said, when I was 20 years old, I wasn't really taught how to invest, how to use my money the best way I can. Okay. I've learned as I've gotten older how to do that better, and how to set up for, like you said, a rainy day, or set up for my retirement. because the goal is to retire, but you don't want to retire poor. You want to have plenty of money to do what you want to do and do the things that you might not have done while you were working. So it's very, very important that, like you said, make your money work for you. If you spend $1, save $1. And I know that's hard, but in order to do that, you sometimes have to give away, well, maybe I can't go on this trip, or I can't go out to eat, or I can't do this, or I can't do that. But in the long run, you'll be so thankful when you get older in your 40s and 50s that you invested that money and you save that money for down the road, because it will greatly change your life.
That's good. God, that's good. Yeah. And this is why I changed it to, helping 27-year-olds, because I kept getting asked questions from people, like they kept asking her, like, hey, I'm struggling with this. I'm struggling with that. What do you think about this? What do you think about that? And I'm like, listen, I'm going to have to help you guys out, because I remember being at 20-something-year-old, but I didn't know about XRP until Bill told me, right? Like, I didn't know about any of this stuff. And this was at 29, right? And so you still learn it, right? You still learn these things, but if you can implement it early and faster, and then especially, like you may not get married one day, but what is it like being at 30 with $20,000 saved up? Now it's harder. It's easier said than done, but if they can really discipline themselves, and there's tons of applications now that allow you to store money and just tuck it away. And if you could, you're disciplined, so you'll be able to do this. For the other kids, it's like, I don't know what I'm going to do with my life. Okay, here's the first thing I would say. Figure out a place to store your money, then take that money and invest it and let that money grow. And don't touch it, because guess what's going to happen? And Bill, you can attest to this, and Brett, you're learning this now. Time is going to pass away anyway. The time is going to pass anyway. So how real sucky is it to be hearing this advice at 19 and then at 31 saying, man, I remember listening to this podcast and I didn't listen to those guys at all. And then having a Brett that's like, I listened to him. So they're like, well, he's just lucky. It's like, no, I just took the advice and implemented it early instead of trying to take the school of hard knocks. Now everybody has to go to the school of hard knocks. Here's the most valuable lesson for that 20-year-old at home, and I'm going to bring it full circle. Learn from other people that have already made the stupid mistakes. Learn from us. Learn from me and Bill. Learn from us. We already made them, right? Shortcut the learning curve. This is free advice. You know what I mean?
I have one other thing to say too, is that also too, is that just invest. I don't consider myself a financial guru by any means, but never feel like you're smarter. Always want to keep learning. Numerous hours a week that I constantly read and watch and learn about how to do different things, how the market's going, how to use your money the best way you can. Don't ever feel like you're smart enough that you don't ever have to learn, because I think a lot of people get to that point where, well, I know it all, or I know what to do here, or I know what to do there. But there's, like you said, there's always somebody out there that can do it smarter, faster, better, and cheaper, quicker, and make you more money or put you in a better situation. I think that one of the biggest things people come up to me is like, well, should I invest in this or should I invest in that? And I don't try to give my opinion, because I don't want to sway them one way or the other, because they'll come back and say, okay, well, it didn't work out, or I didn't make the money that I wanted to make. But the main thing is be open to ideas, and then you have to take the responsibility to study it, learn it before you invest in it. Okay, don't take somebody's word for it that, hey, because there's a lot of things that go around, especially nowadays, that is the hottest new thing, gimmick, coin. If you want to go talk crypto, whatever you want to do, financial things, they tell you you'll make a ton of money, but they really won't do it. So you have to do your own investment. Kind of like you have to do your own work on the court or on your sport. You have to, if you really want to be financially free and to be your own ruler of your own domain, you have to take ownership of that, and you have to be willing to put the work in. Just no matter what it is, if you want to get good and you want to be profitable in what you're investing in.
That's good. And it's funny, it's not funny to say it, but I've been saying that the last couple of weeks. I'm like, everything that I'm teaching on the basketball court parallels to regular life. Mm-hmm. If you're not going to study, Brett, so it's the same disciplines, right, that I taught you about, doing the 1,000 reps every day underneath the basket, 5 to 10 feet. If you're not going to invest that dollar, and this is a lesson I had learned, like, I'm not acting like I got it all figured out. I just learned these lessons, right? And that's why I'm turning around and trying to help other people, and I'm sounding the horn as quickly as possible, right? I'm yelling from the mountaintops. Listen, hey, I'm not that far removed from y'all. You're talking 13, 12 years for most of these cats, right? So I'm like, hey, you're going to be real sucky at 32 and I'm 44 and I'm way up here and the same information I'm telling you right now. And so that was a good question, and I'm 1,000% will build. Do your due diligence, learn, study. You never stop learning. You're always learning, and I think that's the biggest thing for people on this call right now. People that are at home, 20. Don't stop learning. Don't be that person that's like, "Well, I'm good. I know it all," and it's like, yeah, that's usually how I know that end of the story. I've seen a lot of people say that, and then they're stressing on Facebook. They're like, I don't know, I'm going to pay this month's bill. And it's like, you remember when you said you were done learning, right? Just because you got the degree and you finished high school and you finished college, you're never done learning. You should always be learning about what your money is doing. Be a student of your money. A lot of people are not students of their money, right? And because they're not students of the money, so if you're a 20-year-old, be a student of your money. Money it will come back to you, right? But your time wasted trying to catch up is what's going to hurt you, right? And so that was a good call. That was just good. It was great. I hope somebody learns it. What are you guys' parting wisdoms for the world? Anything for the rest of the world? It was a good call. It was a good convo.
I just say push past what you think. I remember multiple times you tell me we only like our mind tricks us more than our physical body. We have a lot more to give, and even outside of sports, you might be tired. You just have to push through it and get through those hard times, because those hard times that you go through, ultimately, I look back at my career and the stuff that I've went through so far, and the hard times a lot of times build you up and create more lessons than wins and all these achievements do. Like they're a lot nicer, but ultimately, if we won every game of season, what would there be to learn? Versus if you're going through adversity and testing adversity and learning how to go through that and the lessons from that.
It's good. I like it. You learned something after all.
Yes.
And I guess the last thing I'll have to say is Coach Ward, thank you for taking special interest in my son, because I think you really helped him become the man he is. And also St. Paul High School, they were a big part in developing his path and where he is today and to being successful in whatever he decides to do. So I want to thank you guys for that.
Hey, I appreciate it. I thank you. And I always say it's a parent triangle. The parent, the player, and the coach all has to be in unison on making it work. And if either side doesn't work, then you don't have a triangle. It just falls apart. And so I thank you. I thank Sarah and Brett for allowing me to coach. And it wasn't always easy, right? But it's oh, thank you. Hey, guest appearance there. But it's you don't know until after the journey. I always tell parents, and I'm going to leave on these parting words, you don't know what the other side of the story is. So I always get players say, are you going to miss this? I said, if I'd done my job right, you'll be back around. And if I did my job right, you won't be back around and you'll be off doing great things. But either way, you'll be back around at some point. And so understanding that as long as we're giving them the right tools, and when I say this, and you call Ryan Dempsey, I talk to Ryan all the time. Right. And I talk to Brett and I talk to all these guys all the time. And I think that's the difference for saying, hey, doing check-ins. And I need to go do some more check-ins with like Lane. He's in Mizzou. So it's hard to get a hold of him. He's like Brett now. Coach, I'm busy. I can't talk to you. Like, I got a life to live. And I'm like, okay. Yeah, like, come on, man. Like, what's up? Talk to your old man. Right. But no, and it takes all sides. And I hope the parents at home and they listen to this and they run it back and they understand the nuggets. Because it's one thing for me as the coach to say it, but it's different from the families to come in and have those conversations. So this is great. Hey, before you guys close completely out the application, let it load completely, because if not, it won't load. And I still have Chris Wesley's thing that is driving me nuts. So give it a few minutes before you close out the app. So thank you, everybody at home, for listening. This has been the latest edition of Coach Ward Speaks podcast. This has been part 2 of the mentee-mentor relationships. If you don't understand the importance or power of mentorship, run it back, take notes, listen to it. Athletes, listen to what Brett said. Parents, listen to Bill said. And then cross-blend what they both said. for the total experience, right? I'm just a coach, right? I'm just a coach, and you're like, you have to say these things, right? Like when the player says that to the parents, you're my mom and dad, you have to say these things. No, we really don't have to say these things, because I've seen it where they don't say these things, right? And so it's important, it's important, it's important. So everybody have a great night.
One last thing. Do your job.
Yeah, hey, just do your, I love it. Just do your job. Comes out 5/5/24. And so for everybody that's at home that's wondering about what the term used when I'm really mad at the guys, it's just do your stinking job. And that's when they haven't done their jobs at all the entire night, and we just did not perform, right? And that's just full disclosure. But that only comes out when they don't do their jobs, like multiple possessions in a row. But other than that, just do your job, and I wish nothing for the best for you to become the best version of yourselves possible. Oh, one more thing. Like and subscribe. Like and subscribe. Like and subscribe. All right, guys. Thank you.
See ya.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.